I'm Chris, you're watching FRAG-MENTAL. Thank you once again for tuning in to my channel, I really do appreciate it. In this video I'm talking about a brand new limited edition release from Byron Parfums. It's called ZAIRE. Stay tuned to FM. So about 2 years ago, this unknown fragrance house based in Paris released 3 fragrances that just gathered a little bit of hype on the internet. I think they did send them out to a lot of YouTubers, a lot of influencers, and it kind of worked for them. What also has to work though is their fragrances have to be good. The 3 fragrances they released were Pirates, Muller Muller and 0.9, and the one thing that stood out to a lot of people about all these fragrances was how rich and dense and high quality they smelled. It just smelled like there were no compromises in the perfumery. They were just big, bold smells. They were all beast performers. I enjoyed all of them. The one that got most of the hype, I think, was Muller Muller. I feel like I saw more videos about Muller Muller than any of the other ones. And rightly so. Muller Muller is a fantastic fragrance. Perhaps leans a little more to the feminine, but I had no problem wearing it, really enjoyed it. Recently, we've had some other releases. We had Oud Bourbon, which hasn't been talked about a lot, but again, really enjoy that one. My favorite from the house so far is called the Chronic. It's a gorgeous, addictive, sweet, spicy sandalwood scent. If you've not tried the Chronic, then definitely try and sample that one if you can, because it is just amazing. I recently reviewed one called Byron Man, which was one of their other limited releases, and that was a bit of a departure for Byron. They moved away from this very rich, dense, massive performing fragrance and released something that was a little more reined in, a little more subtle and elegant and dialed back. So, you know, perhaps more suitable for the workplace, or when you're in a situation where you don't want to choke people out with a massively projecting, massively performing fragrance. So I enjoyed it, but it took me by surprise because I was expecting it to be the performer that all their other fragrances have been. So we took a little bit of a sidestep with Byron Man in terms of the DNA and the distinctiveness that the other fragrances had and the performance. We're back on track with this one. ZAIRE is a fragrance that really aligns with the original releases in terms of how bombastic and how rich and how natural smelling they are. This one is in collaboration with Parisian fashion designer Christian Manjaro. I'm going to be honest, up until a couple of weeks ago, didn't know who this guy was, not really that up to speed on my fashion designers. But because his name's on the label of this fragrance, did a little bit of research, found out who he was. Seems like a good chap. We've had a bit of a chat on Instagram. He's invited me over to Paris for drinks. And you know what, I'll do that. I'll go to those lengths for this channel. I'll go to Paris and rub shoulders with Parisian fashion designers. Well, someone's got to do it. It's not just all fun making a YouTube channel about fragrances. Sometimes we have to take one for the team. All right, let's talk about the fragrance. So as far as I can tell, this is the same bottle as Byron used for the rest of the line, slightly different label. So let's just take a closer look and go through the notes. We've got pineapple, caramel, aquatic notes, jasmine, orange blossom, coconut, bourbon vanilla, oud, musk, patchouli and cedar. So there's a buzz note in here that I'm sure you all heard when I said it, and immediately you might have started thinking certain things. Yes, there's a note of pineapple in here, but no, it doesn't smell like any other very popular fragrances out there that have pineapple in. It's very different. I'm just going to respray it to remind myself on my hand. The pineapple in this it's not that bright, fresh type of pineapple that you might be used to smelling in other fragrances. It's more of a slightly muted but very rich, very sweet pineapple, like a candied pineapple, almost like a cake maybe. Think of a cake with pineapple in it, or maybe the tinned chunks of pineapple that you can buy, so they just seem not as fresh, obviously, and very sweet. And I think it's probably the presence of caramel in here. Caramel seems like a fairly prominent note in here, so the caramel mixing with this lovely sweet pineapple just works really well. We've also got some coconut, and the coconut is really smoothing this fragrance out, and it's just giving us a little bit of an exotic feel, slightly creamy exotic feel that coconut can sometimes lend to a fragrance. So to me, it opens up like a fruity gourmand, a little bit exotic, quite sweet, but never cloyingly sweet, but it certainly is very rich, dense and deep. As it dries down, we get to the florals in the mid, so we've got some jasmine and orange blossom. I love the note of orange blossom, but I find it to be quite a light, subtle, elegant note, and I feel that maybe it's being a little bit overpowered by the strength of all the other materials used in this fragrance. In the heart, namely the jasmine. So the jasmine here seems very strong. It's got this very potent indolic nature that you can associate with jasmine, and it seems to lend a density and a real weight. This is a really weighty fragrance. Jasmine is one of the most expensive materials you can use in perfumery, and it does make this fragrance smell really expensive. Well, it is really expensive. We'll get into the price later on. It might shock you a little bit, but we'll talk about that later. As it dries down even further, we get to the woods in the base. So let's talk about the oud in here, because it is listed. It's definitely not a strong oud. It's definitely not a very barnyardy type of oud at all. If anything, I would say it provides this very slight medicinal nuance that is just going on in the background. Barely noticeable, but if you get up close, there's just a little bit of something. Personally, I think it works really nicely. I think it just adds an extra little bit of complexity to the fragrance. We've also got some cedar in here, so that is providing a bit of a kind of a sweet, woody, resinous quality to it. The patchouli, to me, I don't know how good I am at detecting patchouli. Sometimes I get it straight away, but it tends to be a more earthy patchouli, or sometimes patchouli can come across as chocolatey. I don't get either of those types of accords in this fragrance. There may very well be a lot of patchouli in here, but the musks in here I think are adding just this beautiful sparkle to the fragrance. They don't seem dark, they're not animalic in the slightest. They seem quite light musks, and I think that just makes the fragrance, it just really lifts the fragrance and just adds this extra little bit of kind of sparkle to it. As much as I've tried to break this fragrance down in terms of notes and accords used in here, it is quite difficult to pick out individual notes. I wouldn't say that there's any one note that really rises to prominence above all the others. I would just describe this as one very lovely, smooth blend. And if you were to push me to describe the characteristic of this fragrance, to try to convey what it smells like, I would say it smells like caramelized fruits. The previous release of Byron Man, as I mentioned, was a little bit more reined in, didn't quite have the big performance of some of Byron's other offerings. This is back to that. This reminds me of a fragrance from back in the day, before there were regulations. I feel like this is the type of scent that someone has said, forget all the regulations, just blend what you want, make it as strong as you want. And I feel like this harkens back a little bit to that vintage style of perfumery where it was all very big and bold and very strong. But it does give it a modern twist as well. I wouldn't say that it smells vintage, but just in the way that it is very thick and dense and very big in terms of its performance. Now, if you're familiar with any of Byron's early releases, I would compare this to Mulla Mulla. It's not exactly the same at all. It's a very different fragrance, but in terms of it having that caramelized, fruity accord, then this one reminds me most of Mulla Mulla. So if you enjoyed Mulla Mulla, if that was a fragrance that you liked, then I'm pretty sure that you'll get on really well with ZAIRE. Let's talk about the versatility. I'd say it's very versatile. I think you could wear this all year round. I think you could wear it for any occasion. It could easily be a really nice signature scent. It's marketed as being a unisex fragrance, and yeah, I agree. I would say it's definitely a unisex fragrance. I've enjoyed wearing this. I would certainly have no problem wearing this. If I'm being honest, I would say it does lean a little more to the feminine side of things, but again, I have no problem with that. So if you're a guy and you're a little bit unsure, do try to sample this one if you can. Let's talk about the price of this. This is more expensive than any of Byron's other offerings. Okay, you ready for this? For 50ml, it is extrait, it is a Parfum extrait. 50ml in the UK is going to cost £280. Yeah, that is a lot of money. We're talking Roger prices there. If you're in the UK, you can buy this from Byron's Etsy store. I'll leave a link down below. If you're in the US, a couple of places you can get this from. There's Crystal Fragrance, there's also Door Perfumes. I'll leave the links to those places as well. It's going to set you back $320 if you're buying this in the US. I'm not sure if there's shipping on top of that. Maybe not at this price, but you know, who knows? Look into those links if this is something that you're interested in trying or sampling. So, is it worth paying that amount of money for this fragrance? I'm going to be honest here, and for me personally, it's a little bit out of my price range. I'm very, very thankful that Byron did send me this for review. But if I was to be purchasing this fragrance, as much as I really enjoy this, £280 for 50ml is a little bit out of my price range. It is very high quality. There's a lot of naturals used in here, or it smells like it to me anyway. But for what I earn, for the money that I have, it's a little bit out of my price range. I'm sure that there are many of you out there that are earning more money than me, and if you really enjoy high quality natural fragrances, then this one could very well be justified. So it's just all dependent on the person. It depends on what value you put in perfumery, what value you put in natural ingredients, how much you're earning, and whether you want to spend that much on fragrance. There are many people out there that would not hesitate to pull the trigger at £280, $320 on this one, but for me personally, it's a bit too much. All right, just to sum all that up, this is a sweet, fruity gourmand. It's thick, rich, dense, it's very long lasting, it's got some high quality materials used in here, lots of naturals as far as I can tell, but the price does reflect that. So those are my thoughts on ZAIRE from Byron Parfums. If you have tried this one, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. It is a limited release. There are only 500 bottles available. I'm not sure whether they're going to sell like hotcakes or whether they're going to be there for some time, but I will leave links to all the places you can purchase it from. I'm not sure about samples. You'll have to check those individual links to see if those retail places offer samples as well. If you can sample it, I would say definitely worth checking out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, keep tuning into FM and keep smelling good.